Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Hannah and I am a self-improvement coach and trauma coach as well as a content creator. Today we're going to be talking about a pretty intense topic and I'm going to be giving my unedited thoughts on the topic. Keyword unedited. So if I stutter through or lose my train of thought, guys, just bear with me. So one thing you might not have known is I also am a premarital coach. I don't do it as often anymore, but I've been doing it for 2 years officially and several years before that unofficially. My whole premise with the premarital coaching was basically to offer the Muslim community resources on how to navigate marriage, because I was just seeing so many people rushing into quite literally the biggest decision of their life, the thing that is going to impact your future. It'll impact your finances. It'll impact obviously whether or not you have children and what kind of children you end up raising. It would impact your health. So many parts of life are affected by this decision, and yet Muslims were rushing into it. You know, you get lost in the emotions of it, and it was leading to disastrous results. So I basically created some programs around this. So the title, it sounds a bit alarming, but I want you to know that it's not necessarily why you're never going to fall in love. It is what are the things in our society today that are really keeping us from accessing the type of the type of love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended for us. If you see me looking down, I'm just looking down at my notes. So let's get started, inshallah. So love is a theme and a topic that has transcended generations, right? So we see it constantly in the media today. We have love songs, there are romance novels, there are, romantic comedy movies, and no matter what, you cannot escape the effect of the ideas about love in our society. For those of us who are living in Western societies, so non-Muslim countries, we are in a bit of trouble because we're being constantly bombarded with these ideas of what love is and what it looks like that are very counter to what Islam tells us that love should be looking like. So for example, it is, a very common idea that, if you love someone, you are going to, you fall madly in love very quickly, you end up sleeping with the person, you live like you're married before you're actually married, and you just do anything for this person. Obviously, that is not something that aligns with our deen, because there is a process through which we're supposed to get to know the person that we want to marry, and whether love kind of comes before that or after that, that's a whole different topic. But we don't engage in certain things before marriage, right? Marriage is supposed to be the environment in which love grows and thrives. So the one thing I've noticed and seen, just, it is it is really a core belief of mine that the way Western society has framed love is actually completely destroying the foundation of what love is as a whole. And you see it with the number of heartbreaks that happen, how many times people get together, go super far in the relationship, if you're getting where I'm coming from, and then completely break up. How many divorces? We're seeing a 50% divorce rate steadily, staying right around there over several years, despite tremendous effort to bring it down. How many individuals are single mothers or single fathers? The person that they had a child with completely left the picture. You have broken families. It's horrendous. This is actually quite terrifying when you think about it, because families are the basic unit of society. If the basic unit, if you have this like pyramid and the bottom of the pyramid is completely shattered, you're gonna end up in a situation where you can't build off of society. The foundation is broken. So what I want to discuss first is the dopamine rush that comes with love. When you fall in love with someone, and this is however you define it, there is a surge of chemicals, neurochemicals, that affect the way you see the person, affect the things you actually feel inside of your body, affect your perception of the world around you. And two of the biggest neurochemicals that are affecting this, neurotransmitters, are dopamine, which is the neurotransmitter of motivation. It's also a very strong feel-good chemical. And oxytocin, which is the love hormone, or the hormone of bonding and connection. The thing about neurobiology, right, is you kind of can't escape the effects of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created it for a reason, but you can still navigate it with wisdom. The problem in our society today, in Western societies, is that what ends up happening is you have this rush of chemicals, and then you're constantly being bombarded with messages of like, go after it, let it influence you. This is very counter to our deen, because our deen tells us that, hey, your feelings, you can have them and you can understand them, but don't let them be the thing that you use to dictate the decisions that you make. One, because shaitan is going to 100% take advantage of those feelings and manipulate you into doing things that you wouldn't do if you were in the right mind. And two, it's going to stop you from being able to do the kinds of things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to do. It puts you in danger, right? So the dopamine rush is something that really gets in the way of love, because what also ends up happening is that sometimes, because of that immense, intense emotional pressure that you are feeling, you're not ever stepping back and thinking, hey, is this person actually a good person for me to consider? Is this someone who aligns with my values? Is it someone that I can actually get along with? Do our personalities match pretty well? Or are we constantly going to be fighting and arguing? Is it someone who holds values or lives their life in a way that's very different than the way I live my life? Is it someone who, if, we had a disagreement, it would end up being a disagreement that completely broke everything, right? How would you even be, how do you know that this person objectively is a good person for you to consider for marriage? The other thing that really gets in the way of just a healthy marriage, for Muslims being able to end up in a healthy marriage, is the fact that there's such an obsession with relationships in our society. There is such an obsession. It goes way beyond what is normal. So obviously, when you think about it like evolutionarily and biologically, the premise of a relationship is to procreate and also to have a safe environment to, raise a family. You were pairing with somebody so you could be protected from the elements, essentially, right? So now we live in a society where that's no longer the case, and that's no longer necessary, because most people are, can operate completely on their own. That's very counter to how the concept of marriage has existed over a very long time. It's very new. But now what ends up happening is relationships stop being about, the sacrifice and building a family, and are more so about just the carnal desires that we have in a very self-centered view of what our life should be. So you find a relationship because it makes you feel good, not because it's what is good for you in your life in the long term. This obsession with relationships ends up putting people in this place where they feel a lot of pressure to just find someone, right? And it's even harder when you're Muslim, because now the pressure is to sleep around with someone, do something very haram, just to prove that you can, so that people don't say things that are insulting to you or assume that there's something wrong with you. So now you have people that are just settling or fighting to just find someone to call their significant other, even if it ends up being that this person is actually extremely detrimental to their well-being. This obsession with relationships is it leads you to a place of either rushing into something you shouldn't be rushing into, or losing contentment with where you are and what you do have. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't written for you to be with someone just yet. Allah hasn't written marriage for you. And by the way, anytime I'm referencing all of this, like when I say falling in love and, being with someone, know that I'm always referencing it in the context of what is Islamically appropriate. Please don't comment below saying, well, you shouldn't be saying this. This is all within, when I say being with someone, I mean in marriage. When I say falling in love, I mean, with regards to marriage. Okay. Another thing that has completely destroyed individuals' ability to sustain the feeling of love is the on to the next paradigm. There is such a strong narrative of, if you don't like it, just leave it. Now, obviously, there are circumstances in which that is very much necessary. If this person is harmful to your physical health, to your mental health, to your spiritual health, and there's nothing that's going to stop that, you need to leave. That's not something physically. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? If that ever happens, that is a time to get out and to find help. When it comes to someone who's maybe not as emotionally available, or maybe not as spiritually inclined, and so they're affecting your religiosity, there is space for that to be corrected. You have to approach it with wisdom. It's obviously helpful to have someone who you trust also kind of look at the situation, understand the circumstances. I can't just give general advice because I don't know exactly what your situation is, but there basically we tell people give up as soon as it gets hard or gets uncomfortable and find the next. There are people that are literally on their second, third, fourth marriages because of this. And yeah, obviously not everyone has a failed relationship because it was 100% their fault. And I know plenty of people who were married and later divorced, and you would look at the situation and be like, no, that's a very good reason to get divorced. That's not something that you should feel ashamed of, right? There were sahabiyat and sahaba who were divorced and remarried. That's completely fine. But we just have to be super careful that we allow ourselves in a situation where we give up too quickly. And I think a lot of people give up too quickly when it comes to marriage. The thing about love, and this is something that I have come across, hearing from even mentors of mine who have marriages that I really think are very beautiful, is you're not always going to have that feeling. You're not always going to be experiencing that heartwarming, emotional connection to that person. And it is in those times where you have to really fall back on things that are a little more objective. Well, what else made me fall in love with this person? This is why what I was talking about in the beginning, just rushing into things, is completely disastrous, because when you're rushing into things because of that dopamine rush and those emotions, those objective aspects of the person that are just respectable and you admire, you don't even have time to explore or investigate them. So then when you get to the point where you do lose those feelings, because it is for majority of people inevitable, it's going to probably happen, you don't have anything to fall back on. So you're like, dang, like, did I just fall for this person because I thought they were handsome, or I thought they were pretty, or they said the right things, or they, treated me well, or I just really wanted to be with someone. I wanted a relationship. I was tired of people saying, oh, you're not married yet, how sad. And so I just rushed into it. You basically corner yourself in a relationship. You don't want to be the person that's just jumping from person to person. Obviously, if you're exploring options and you're looking at what Allah has presented to you and you're going by the pros and cons list and you're doing all that, that's fine. But if you're doing it just because you completely lose the feeling and then you're jumping around, all you're doing is applying the instant gratification aspect of our society to something that is life-changing. Right? This isn't an app on your phone. It's not a video that you're watching. It is the person you are going to be with for the rest of your life. You need to learn how to handle a little bit of discomfort in that, how to have hard conversations with the person and with yourself, and not just assume, okay, well, it's not feeling so great. Let me go to the next. Because eventually what might happen is you find yourself realizing that you were doing that and it's too late. Like that person that you realized would have been a really good choice for you is no longer available. Maybe one day I'll do a video on just how to navigate this decision-making process, because there's a lot to it. There's, the consultation phase, talking to other people. There's istikhara. There's going through the list of what you could appreciate about the person. And there is an aspect of listening to your what you do feel emotionally about this. Obviously, you don't want to be in a situation where you completely are anxious to the max or regretting your decision. But if you find yourself having this pattern of constantly just running away from something because you don't feel like you want to go, how do I say this? It's you don't feel satisfied ever, it might be time to look inward. Another problem and why you will never fall in love is if you are a person who does not know what you want. I remember I'd have these conversations with people and I'd be like, okay, what are you looking for in someone? What is it that you want in someone? And they couldn't tell me. And it's if you were applying to a degree program, if you were applying to a job, if you were even house hunting, you would have a sense of what you want. I want 2 floors or 4 bedrooms, or I want 1 bath and a half. I want, this salary. I want this type of schedule. Ideally, you have your idea of what you want. How is it that, again, with the biggest decision that you'll ever make in your life, you don't know what you want? You can't even can't even give a solid 5 qualities that you would want in a person. That's really alarming. And what that tells me when someone's not able to do that is they don't know themselves well enough to be able to give that answer. And if you don't know yourself well enough, you're not ready to get married. You need to take some time to do some soul searching, because that's a certain level of immaturity. You haven't matured enough to be able, how are you going to handle another person when you are yourself aren't able to handle yourself? Right? You need to take some time to explore what is it that you need in another person. There are a few different, I'll share some things that I actually teach in my premarital workshop, but one way to kind of investigate what it is that you want in another person is to look at your best friend and see what your best friend offers you. If that best friend didn't have that specific quality, you would no longer be friends. Usually that's a good litmus test for what you need in another person, what you need in a partner. The other thing is you kind of want to explore what your upbringing was like and what the narratives around love were like in your home. Did you have parents who had a really good, healthy relationship, so you have good insight into what a relationship rooted in respect and love and admiration looks like? Or did you grow up watching, parents who had a chaotic relationship, or maybe you're a child of divorce, or maybe you don't know a parent, or you saw a lot of abuse? What frames your conception of what marriage looks like? You might think that you'll escape this, right? Or it's not going to affect you. It will, because our nervous system takes note of the way that we are growing up. And from that, it starts forming barriers and protections, right? And it starts setting off alarms whenever we see something in another person who is close to us that resembles that unsafe relationship. And you are going to have those things come up in a marriage. So if you don't figure out what your perception of marriage is, and where that helps you and where it hurts you, it's going to eventually come up, and you're not going to know what to do with it. The last thing I will talk about is dating and hookup culture. Western society has completely, this is going to be the thing that just demolishes this society. The way hookup culture exists, the fact that it is completely normal to sleep around with people that you haven't even known for like an hour, is so disturbing and so scary. One, just from a biological perspective, right? We know we're learning more about pair bonding theory. Our hormonal symptoms are very attuned, and they have been set up to operate in a specific way over hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, centuries. This is centuries of biological programming that we can't undo. So if you're able to sleep around with people and not have any emotional effect, that is actually scary. That's not normal. That's not actually how your brain and your hormonal system is supposed to be operating. You should be feeling something. You should, feel disturbed. It's not normal to not have that. And if you don't have that, well, part of it is that you basically just broke your ability to connect with people intimately down. Good luck finding a partner with a situation like that. This is what hookup culture does to people. It's no surprise, right? There is literal data that shows us that people who have slept around with others, basically the higher your body count, the lower likelihood you have of finding a satisfying long-term relationship. We're going to have a lot of people who are going to grow up into old age and be alone. And sometimes we hear that and like people will be like, okay, so what? Let me cue you into the actual logistical realities. Family, just family, having children, having a husband or a wife, is not just this feel-good thing. Family is actually a social unit that has tremendous utility. It has economic utility. It has geographic utility. When you have a strong family system, if you get sick, you have people that are available to help you. If you end up in a financial situation that's really disturbing and difficult to handle, you have people who can support you. It ends up being almost like a mini society, right? Where you're able to serve people. When you've abandoned that for your own personal desire, what ends up happening is that you leave yourself in a situation where now at the age of 60, 70, 80, your health is declining. You don't have anyone to lean on. Yeah, maybe you have friends, but your friends are the same age as you, right? It's very different than having people who are, much more able. to help you. And it's really scary because you think about it, if something happened to you and you couldn't reach a phone, who would drop by your house? Who would be coming home to see you and find you there? If you ended up in a situation where in the middle of the night, something was happening, you stroked out, right? And you couldn't drive yourself, you couldn't make your way over to the phone to call 911, who would be there, right? It's like, I think this is, if you're in the medical field, this is one of the most heartbreaking things that we see about seeing people who are, extremely elderly, completely alone at the hospital with nobody visiting them, or alone in nursing homes, or alone in hospice with not a single person visiting them. It's so heartbreaking. And these are going to be the consequences that maybe people aren't thinking about right now, but it is going to torment them for the rest of their lives. And I think this is a big reason why we're seeing a big turnaround in people who are just abandoning hookup culture. And they're not even religious, right? They're not even people who practice really any faith, but they just see the detriment that it brings. So guys, I hope you guys enjoyed that video. That's all I got for this one. It is something that if we don't address, the system and the institution of marriage is going to fall flat on its face. Then there are people who are going to be smart enough to be intentional to do the work to correct these issues and not let themselves, fall for the dopamine rush or fall for the societal messaging around love. If you enjoyed this video, then please like it, leave a comment, subscribe for more, and thank you so much for watching. Assalamu alaikum.